So my name is Ishan Kumar. I'm in product management for Ping Identity, and I work on our IDaaS solutions. And one of the things I love to talk about is not just technology, but the people behind the technology. And one of the things why we bring people and technology, at least in my presentations, together is because I want it to be relatable to not only you as a consumer of technology, but also a provider of technology. And so oftentimes when we think about us as individuals, we want products and services that are something that's personal to us, consumable by something that's relevant, but secured and private, right? And the challenge, if you think about what's happening in your organizations today, right, and if you apply a little bit of Conway's law to what's happening within not just technology teams and how they coordinate, but in the broader organization, to take an example of a marketing person or a business person comes up with an idea, they've done the research, they've kind of put their background into, okay, I got a proposal for a business, and they come out, get the approval, the funding, and they walk over to the app teams, right, and say, oh, I have an idea, I need you to build an app. Mobile app or a new service, and it has to be personalized, it has to be seamless. You call it digital transformation, you call it, we're cloud-first initiatives, and we're really thinking about how we engage our customers in a different and personalized manner. The app teams are under the constraints of, well, I got to do everything in the cloud, I have to do it fast, I have to be secure, but I have to meet the timelines of the business, right? And so they're working together and trying to figure out how do I fund, with the funding that I have, the timeframes that I need to build, what technology is going to help me get there as quickly as possible. There's always this build and buy decision, right? And you have the other personas that are involved, and you have the IT team, right? Most companies have existing infrastructure. They have built a lot of technology already. And that team that is with marketing and the apps are trying to build a service. And the IT folks come along and it's like, well, hold on. We have infrastructure. We have services already provided for you. Why don't you use that? It's stable, it performs, it services the rest of our website. And the app teams and marketing guys, yeah, but it takes us 3 months to get there, to even started with you. You have a full load of projects, and you're in this conundrum, right? I got to get to market fast. I got to please my users. I have to be able to go grow the company. And then, I feel bad for the CISO guys. The CISO's the team the last to figure out what's happening, right? And they come along and it's like, wait, hold on a second. If you're going to build a secondary application or another service or site, what about the policies? How are you going to protect the data? Are you consistent with the way we practice our identities today, right? And identity sits at the center of all that, right? User experience, security, and making sure it plays a critical role. And folks are, that dynamic is being played out on the dynamics of the politics within the organization, but not really thinking about the technology that can help bridge all those different barriers. Right? And I think about my personal experience where, I recently bought a pair of jeans, and I don't shop that often, right? Typical guy. And so I go to a site, I don't want to go to the store, and it's like, all right, let me go to a retail site where I typically like to shop. I haven't used my account. And so I click on some menu and say, which account should I, try to log in? And I see 3 different options. I see a website option, I see a rewards option, I see a credit card option. I have no idea which one I used a year ago or 2 years ago, wherever the last time I bought jeans. So I started picking one, right? And I try to go figure out which one. And then the next question is, what email address did I use? In a year, probably being a tech guy, I probably created multiple email addresses. And so then I try to go this process of trying to recover my account. And since it's been a while, if I recover my account, I log in. Oh, we haven't seen you in a while. We need to verify that it's you. So I go through another proofing mechanism, right? And guess what? Your credit card's expired. You gotta go update that before I can actually buy a pair of jeans, right? And what happened is like no company comes out with everything possible, right? They started with one system a long time ago, and again, business person comes along, adds another system and service, third one comes along, and you have to aggregate all these systems, right? And what happens is me as an individual, I'm trying to navigate the complexity of your organization, right? All the different teams, the evolution of your business, whether it's how your security policies have evolved, right? Going from simple passwords to adding MFA, to your account recovery process, or if you do want MFA, right, you're addressing one risk but complicating a very low risk situation in another, right? So if I'm signing up for MFA, think about it, I log in once or twice a year. Why would I set up MFA, right? It's not something that's of value to me, but we're going down this path as quickly as possible in the name of protecting accounts without thinking about the ramifications to the user experience. And there's a lot of reasons for that, right? We've been trained, specific us identity professionals, that there's a lot of security that's out there. And consumers are getting, I guess, more in tune with the fact that I should expect companies to protect my data, right? And there's a lot of challenges around authentication itself, right? There's a lot, we as consumers like to assume that the technology is protected, right? Like the way we do our digital identities. Multi-billion-dollar company, you think they do identity right, but you go into those organizations and it's literally one or two people, right? That's them responsible. You talk about data. Like most companies, most folks don't understand that data is spread out throughout a large enterprise. To say that data is protected is a fallacy, right? But yet we're still responsible for doing the best job we can with the resources that we have, right? And then access control, right? We've got all these guidelines, whether it's NIST, whether it's OWASP, how we do assurance levels, how do we do access control. Don't need to go through all of them, right? We spend a lot of time here talking about standards, right? Another layer in which we talk about, and we say, how do we make this interoperable? How do we make sure it's consistent? How do we make sure that we try to build all this? So if you go back to the previous example of, I have an app team that has all these constraints in which I'm trying to deliver an application, right? And what they're going to go through is think about, well, how do I build this? That's the first thing to think about. If you're a developer, I think I can build it. But if you think of the example of 8 blind men walking in, right, and they need to describe an elephant. They all have just a single perspective, right, of what authentication is. And it could be a point of time. I just need three or four things. I need to be able to log in, log out. I need to be able to register. I need to do profile management and recover an account. Simple enough. I can code that up in a few days, right? And then someone says, well, what about social login, right? Scope creep, whatever you want to call it. I want to make sure that users can register. And then a CISO comes along and says, well, actually, now that you've gotten this far, we're starting to see fraudulent accounts. We're starting to see that bots are starting to attack accounts and exposing us to risk. We need to start improving our security, right? And you introduce proofing at registration. You may introduce proofing at periodically within the authentication flow. And then you also have multi-factor, right? And even multi-factor, right? SMS and email are very popular, and we're starting to transition away as quickly as we can, recognizing that they had their limits. And hackers catch up. And the side effect of introducing MFA is that you also interrupt normal users, which is 99% of the interaction, more than 99.99% of the interactions with most sites, is that they're normal. Why should I have to go through MFA? So you want to say, well, how do I reduce the MFA? There's a lot of false positives. I'm interrupting the experience. That can't get users to register. It's impacting my conversions. And then your business evolves. You take a different step, a different direction in terms of integrating with large enterprises, and you need federation. And you heard the keynotes, right? 800 pages of documentation and protocols that you have to go now implement on top of your identity system, and it becomes very challenging. And now you're expanding. The next step is you're expanding into other geographies, and consent's required. A part of the creating account. You're layering and layering and layering, not thinking about the big picture of what an identity system has to provide, right? And now you attend this conference and you hear a lot about passwordless, right? Well, what is passwordless, and how does that relate to everything that I've done before? And we'll talk a little bit about that in respect to like P1 for customers and what we can do to help. So all this technology, all this evolution happens in organizations in microcosms, right? No one really has the big picture. Everyone tries to go execute as quickly as possible. And there's more to it, right? So that's just the identity service. How do you consume identity, right? And we talk with the organizations about the patterns in which they want identity to be displayed with users. Some brands have a very strong presence, and they want you to know that you're interacting with them, right? No matter what property you started from or where you're going from, they want a central experience that security is important to them, and you know that it's trusted. And so from the application perspective, it's hands off. I use a standard way to authenticate, and I want to be able to just leverage the identity service. And it helps those different personas that I was talking about earlier. Marketing and app teams can now focus on the business value that they want to build. Security and IT have the control and the mechanisms, the technology to make sure that it's consistent and compliant with the expectations of the organization. And sometimes the organization evolves, right? And you have a new business unit or a new organization come along and it's like, well, yeah, I get that your brand is very strong, but we're opening up a new shop or a new business in a different country that doesn't know your brand, and we need our own UI. And so now you're at odds again, right? You have the app teams and marketing teams arguing, we need our own brand experience. And you still have the organization, IT, and security folks saying, well, yes, but you need to comply with the policies. What do you do? Right? And so that's where technology, the platform, has to be able to support multiple use cases, right? And if you ever work with the mobile app developers, they want nothing to do with the web. They just want a bunch of APIs, right? I want it immersed into my app. If I'm a digital experience, I want to make sure I can use all the services that you have as APIs. You know, platforms that can support this evolution help bridge those boundaries that you see within the organizations to really make sure that you can connect all the dots. They can help you evolve, right? And you know, an important thing is around motivation of those different organizations, right? Meaning that in the first use case, it's about control, right? It's about moving fast. It's about the organization being able to execute on the value, but they have to give something up, right? And the second use case is like you can build multiple experiences. You can go really fast, right? But you have to develop it. But nevertheless, you're always compliant because there's a central service behind it. In other cases, if you want to be immersive, if you want to have the best digital experience, your priority is not necessarily around the consistency that other scenarios provide, but it takes time to cost and develop because you have to think about your mobile app being deployed and having multiple versions out there, right? And how does your policies coordinate? So that takes maintenance and cost. It probably will slow you down. You know, and as a platform, if you think, and that's again a scenario where you're saying that it's ideal for production. It's ideal for one instance. Then you start expanding. Well, what about your SDLC process? How do you do dev, test, stage, and production? And you replicate all those different scenarios, whether you're a centralized service or whether you're supporting multiple UIs. And can each app team work independently of each other, or do they have to coordinate? Right? Oftentimes we hear, well, we like a central service idea, but we have to coordinate across this one particular team. They're a shared team, and they have a bunch of priorities. Right? I can't really go fast. And then we hear increasingly from organizations that, yes, our central service is super conservative. We want to make sure that accounts have MFA turned on as many as possible. But we have a new account that's coming up, a new service that's coming up, and they're low risk. And we just want single factor and social login. Well, you know, how do I mix and match? And in some scenarios, we're talking about passwordless, right? How do I enable passwordless for my organization for that one specific app? And then if you ever work with an application team, their version of a user, app by app, is always different, right? And to be able to map data across these different repositories become a key enabler for a lot of things to build these scenarios. So technology has the ability to connect the dots across those different things. So from a constituents, the stakeholders, right, you make sure you give the app teams the control, right? The ability to go connect their applications in the manner they feel is best for their customers, for their end users. You give security and IT the assurances that the data is protected, that it meets the security policies. Technology can help drive, a platform approach can help drive a lot of the experiences that you're looking for. And your organization will evolve, right? We continually see that there's an effort to centralize things and decentralize. Centralize and decentralize. That shouldn't trigger a platform conversation to retool, right? Your platform should be able to go build as you go, follow you along as you go in your journey. And one of the things around P1 for customers that we've been investing in is what is MFA's role, right, in all of this? It's a really interesting area, right? There's a lot of sessions around multi-factor and how it helps get to a scenario where you can eventually be passwordless, right? And it hinges on being able to execute biometric on the phone or some other factor that's built in with, say, 502 using a key, right? But what about from where you are today? You have passwords. You have a typical registration experience. How do you walk your organization, your users through getting to a passwordless experience? And so I want to open up just a quick demo, and then we'll talk about that experience here. We developed a little travel site called Siderio. That we've built upon registration and sign-on, right? And if you look at the registration experience, it looks pretty typical. Name, email address, you create a password. We do some password validation to make sure you meet some certain criteria. And behind the scenes is interacting with our APIs to make sure that you are compliant with the policies that you need to create an account, right? But we've interjected something a little different, where we're going to prompt you to say, once you've started the registration, to say, how would you like to really do secure authentication? And you have your typical options, SMS and email, but let's say you want to use a mobile app. Download the mobile app, launch it up, it says, well, let me pair it, right? And so what this is doing is taking a code that was generated through our APIs, connecting a person, a digital identity, through a website, and connecting the mobile device, right? And so when you go into the console and you look at that user, what you'll see is that it's been created, and with that device, with that user, is a device that has been associated. So in one step, you've created an association between a device, a user, and an application, right? And going forward, what you can do when they sign on, you click, they just provide, you detect that it's an option. You type in your username, let's just say it's an email address, and it'll detect in the policies to say, hey, this user has the option to do passwordless. It's going to send a push notification to that person's device. You approve, and you're in. So it's a transition, right? We're able to go build, and this is just for one app, right? You can do this for Sidereal, and that's the only experience you want. The next app that you build or an existing app could have the more traditional approach. It's the same platform, right? You could have a Sidereal experience, you could have a different travel experience or an insurance experience, depending on what you want. But the ability to go back and forth between these should enable you to transition to the organization. So that's all. That's my presentation. Have time for Q&A if you want to kind of dive into any of the specific topics. Donna's going to help me out.
I am. Do you have a question?
First, that was great information. Thank you. I really liked your preamble about all the different things we have to deal with and all the problems. Could you walk us through the download of the QR again and just do that a little more slowly? And,
Sure.
and you know exactly what's the cause and effect there. Thank you.
Absolutely. So what happened, this is a UI built on top of the API. So when they created an account, all right, this basically created I would say, a session and your ability to get a token, right? And it's part of a user object within Ping 1. You can extend it to define, let's just say, MFA methods, right? So there's a whole sub-resource, I would say, of a user that specifically has the ability to set up an SMS or email verification or push notification. So you could take the user to all three if you want. So here we've added the option to set up a mobile app. Now there's an API call if you go down that path to say, I want to pair, right, a mobile app with this user and this app. And so that's what, when you hit that option, you hit connect, that's where the QR code comes back, the code comes back with, and you convert that to a display, right? And so when, through another service, when you present that mobile app, it has a mechanism through an SDK to call back to our service to take that code and pair the device, the user, and the app together. It's all driven through APIs.
Thank you. So you mentioned at one point that one of the things that you could do for MFA is incorporating a FIDO2 key. So could you elaborate on how exactly that would play out when deploying your product on with some customer?
Not yet. So eventually, yes, we will add FIDO key as an option where you would have a similar type of experience where you would have to be able to take the key and register, basically pair it with a device. I don't have an example of that today, but that's something that's coming down the road.
Okay, just was wondering.
Yeah, no, not yet. I think it'd be more device first than FIDO, but. Any other questions? We have a trial set up on developer.pingidentity.com if you want to try some of this technology out. Just go to developer.pingidentity.com. I'm around for a little bit longer if you want to ask me questions. A few of my colleagues are here as well if you want to see an actual demo and dive deeper into it. that's available. You can check out the booth as well. So otherwise, thank you very much. I appreciate y'all coming.